Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's interesting when you do these kinds of things, and from time to time I have to send a bio for something that I'm doing. I have many of them. The one that was just shared is typically used for stuff that I do at the NIH. So it started out with all the science stuff. I would have maybe shared more about my private practice, and really what I do is private practice. I'm an independent practice, and as an independent practitioner and a licensed psychologist, I have opportunity to work with individual clients. I do some work with groups. I do some consulting work with a variety of different organizations, and through those consulting opportunities, I now have some contract work. One is with the National Institutes of Health. So let me share a little bit about my background and how I got to those kinds of things. Prior to coming here to FSU, I went to a college in Bridgewater, Virginia. It's called Bridgewater College. And it was a 4-year liberal arts college, and my undergraduate degree is in psychology. So I actually did some college admissions work for a few years before I decided to come to graduate school. Spent a few years sort of figuring out what I wanted to do. I loved that work. I got to travel a lot. My very first job, they gave me a credit card, a briefcase, and a car to drive. I was like, this is outstanding. I am in a great position. And I even, in the midst of my college admissions work, I traveled to the Virgin Islands twice on their dime. So it wasn't too bad. But I really felt like I wanted to be working in a different capacity in higher education, so I sought out counseling programs and came to FSU for that. I started out in the master's program and was here to get a master's and an educational specialist degree. And at the time was sort of thinking about how I wanted to blend out, what I wanted to concentrate in. I had obtained a position in the Career Center, so I was a career advisor. But I really felt like I liked the mental health piece, and I wanted to sort of do this dual thing, which has in my professional life really served me well. So I did my internship, my formal internship, I think was at the Student Counseling Center here on campus, but I was also working for many years as a career advisor in the Career Center. And then as I got into the doctoral program, which was not my intent when I came. In fact, I think it might have been in Dr. Kelly's class, who's a former faculty member. At the beginning of school, you all know, how many people are planning to go on your master's students? How many people are going on for a doctoral degree? I was one of like 2 who did not raise my hand. But with encouragement from the wonderful faculty here, I found myself in a doctoral program. So I was a graduate of what was then the newly designed and created APA accredited combined program in counseling, psychology, and school psychology program, with at that point really more of an emphasis in career development. And I job shared a position with Dr. Osborne at the Career Center when I was here in the doctoral program. So that's a little bit about my background and educational experiences. Before graduating, I did my internship at the University of Virginia in their counseling and psychological service center. And that was an interesting experience in that most of the training here had been predominantly cognitive behavioral. I found myself immersed in an environment that was heavily psychoanalytic and psychodynamic. In fact, the psychiatrists on staff already had become analysts or were in training for psychoanalysis. So it was a really different training experience. There were some things organizationally that were occurring that made it kind of tough. Mergers, which if you're in higher education, about 10, 15 years ago, that was happening all over the country. And I ended up being at 2 different institutions where 2 different counseling services, helping mental health services on campus merged. 2 cultures colliding, a lot of people left, a lot of bad feelings. But as a training experience, I think that it exposed me to a very vast array of training opportunities. I think my assessment and clinical skills probably got enhanced as a result of that, and gave a lot of different perspective on the work that I did with clients there. So that's a little bit about my experience and background. Following my internship at UVA, I spent some time looking for a job. I had 2 young ones at the time. In fact, my older children, I have 3 children. which I was asked to sort of talk a little bit about work-life balance, which has been a theme throughout my life as well. My older two children are twins. They just started college, so I'm dating myself. They were born 5 weeks before I defended my dissertation, and were 8 weeks old, I think, when we relocated from Tallahassee to Charlottesville for my internship. People ask me all the time, how did you do that? How did you manage all that? I don't know. You just did. You just do what you have to do. And so at any rate, when the internship finished, it was kind of a difficult experience because of everything that was happening there in that center. I just didn't have time, nor did the other interns, to do a lot of job searching. So I spent a year kind of job searching, and I also taught adjunct at James Madison University in Virginia. I was teaching the master's level career counseling course. I did that for a whole year. And then had some opportunities. I was interviewing, and I had several offers, and I decided to take a position at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And the reason that let me switch here. I did that because I knew that I wanted to get licensed. I was also interviewing for some faculty jobs and had a couple of offers. And I decided that given all that they were demanding of me, that it was going to be really hard with two young children and to find the time to get the clinical hours and the supervision that I needed in order to get licensed. And I always felt very strongly about having licensure, that would give me a lot of independence to practice in many different ways, that I could do things independently. When you're licensed, you then can practice independently. So I took the position at UNC Chapel Hill. They, at the time, had both a counseling center and a student psychological service. After a year, the year after I started, then those two services merged. So it's kind of the same thing that happened at UVA. I knew that going in. I thought, this is all I had. I can do this. This won't be a problem. So I took that on, and people left, and there was a lot of upheaval, but I sort of managed that pretty well. When I interviewed for the position, two things. If you're interested in university counseling, I work with a lot of scientists now, and they are always talking about their job talks. They do these job talks, and they're basically talking about their science. If you're interviewing for faculty positions, you've got to talk about your research, but they also want to know that you can teach and you can convey ideas and concepts well. Well, at a university counseling center, they want to know that you do your craft well. So you present cases. And when I interviewed for this position, I remember, interviewing all day, that several people were just really interested in the case that I presented. It was someone that I had worked with on my internship who was a graduate student and was a monk. And I don't even remember what the issues were, but sort of those characteristics were enough that everybody was like, wow, that was just great. Plus, so they knew I was a good clinician, a good counselor. And I also came with the career development background. And I was one of two staff, a more senior staff member, who did career work. At Chapel Hill, while I was on staff, we still did all of the career assessments. They didn't do those in the career center. That's since shifted and changed. But initially, my other colleague and I did that work. So we were doing workshops and career assessments and working individually with the students who had kind of career-related issues. And that, I enjoyed my experience there. It was great being on campus. Carolina is a fabulous institution, so it was wonderful to be there. While I was working there, I had a third child. And then I went back to work, and sort of the whole reflecting on work-life balance and dual career couples and relationships and how we were maintaining that, and just time management in general. The day was long, and I was spending a lot of time getting from place to place and dealing with everyone's schedules. That I really felt like I needed a kind of reduced time opportunity. And I wasn't able to, at that time, to get out of university. So I sort of decided at that point, I'm going to go out on my own, and this is going to work out, and I'm going to go into private practice. People go into private practice in lots of different ways, and maybe you've talked with others or heard other stories about that. I'm pretty risk averse. So let's just say I did it in a very, the least risky way possible. I started out, actually it was in October, so I've been in private practice for 12 years now. I started out by renting a half a day. And I had a ready-made referral source from my university counseling colleagues, and I knew that, once they knew I was in practice, they're always looking for people to refer out to in the community. I thought, well, this will work. Well, I got my place, and then the first month I was paying my bills and had a little bit of profit. After a few months, I rented 2 half days, so building up my practice. The next year I had 2 full days, and by the spring of the second year, I had found a colleague in the community who was looking to split office space. And we shared space for a number of years, and then I have since gotten my own office. So I have my own office in the Chapel Hill area, which is ideally located. People from all over us off the interstate, so location is a big issue. How easy is it to get parking where you're at? Big issue. I was in one place where I didn't find parking, and I knew my clients couldn't find parking. So in my private practice at present, I work with individual clients, and so I do individual counseling and psychotherapy. I call those my private clients. I do some career counseling work, and that is in my private practice. And then I do some consulting. And so the work consists of these private clients, the consulting work that I do, and some of that's pro bono. When you're in independent practice, you do a lot of business development that doesn't end up leading to any compensation, at least not at that time. I've spent quite a bit of time on projects and ideas and talking with people, thinking that things are going to work out, and then they don't. It's just part of what you do, and eventually it helps to brand you, it helps to develop your niche, and eventually that can lead to some potential generating opportunities. It's kind of part of the job. The consulting work has included some nonprofit groups in my community. I've done some work for a group psychotherapy practice. I've done some work for some global organizations in our community. Just last week, I was working with a woman. I guess she has a higher ed background, but there are 2 other social workers on staff who provide kind of health, wellness, and work-life balance kinds of things for SAS employees in the Research Triangle Park. And she read something that I wrote, and she said, you called me and said, hey, you're right here. Let me, tell me a little bit more about what you do, and this is how the consulting thing starts. We agreed on a topic, and I scripted out questions that she was going to ask me and the content. And last week we didn't film. It's a podcast, so we audio taped this podcast on resilience in the workplace. So that's another example of kind of things that you could be doing. I've worked with some government agencies, both in the DC area, but more predominantly in my local area with the institute that's there locally, the National Institutes of Environmental Health Sciences, and higher educational institutions. I do some work for an office at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. It is an office that supports graduate education in the biological and biomedical sciences. And I've learned to know many of the staff who work there through my years and being exposed not only to graduate student work, but the sciences. And from that, those experiences, and to be a consultant means that you're an expert. So if you identify yourself as having a niche or an expertise in a particular area, and you let other people know, or you get known for that, then you get asked to do things. And that's how the consulting relationships have developed, and some of those have developed into what are now contracts. So my work with the National Institutes of Health actually was brought about by a relationship that I had with a professor that was at UNC Chapel Hill. She was very instrumental. She worked in medical school, so has like biology or biochemistry background. And she was very instrumental in getting grant funding for programs for minority students, for international students, and mentoring kinds of things. So she built actually what is now a whole office at the UNC Chapel Hill supporting graduate students all over the institution in biomedical and biological and biomedical sciences. And there are 4 or 5 PhD research scientists who head up the program areas in that office. But they don't have anybody like me. So they call on me and they say, hey Denise, we have this student dealing with this issue. What can we do to handle that? Or can you come out, we want to hire you for the day, and I'll talk with their students who are just feeling kind of stressed, or they need to address communication issues with mentors. Some of those students are international. Many of them are diverse, come from diverse ethnic and cultural backgrounds. And the big contract that I have is with the NIH. So Sharon Milgram, who's the director of the office of the NIH called the Office of Internal Training and Education, which is really a support network for all of the trainees at the NIH. Are you all familiar with the NIH? So it is like the premier science research, biological, biomedical research in our country. So people from all over the country and all over the world want to come and train. And at the Bethesda campus, there are 23 different institutes, most of which are housed in the Bethesda campus area. One is in North Carolina, so I do a lot of work with. One is out of Montana, there, and there's one in Frederick and Baltimore, sort of along the DC area. So it's all science training. Most of the trainees have their doctoral degrees and are doing postdocs in science. That's kind of given regardless of what kind of career path you want to take. And when she got this position, she was tapping into all these career development professionals that she knew. She said, "Hey, Denise, are you wanting some more hours?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah." Actually, she was a great referral source for me. So when she left, and this happens too, people move on, transient area. I just learned that a great physician's assistant that referred to me left. I had gotten these fabulous clients from her, and she knew my niche. I do this career thing, plus I sort of understand the mental health, and she was referring people. Now she's gone. I need to make a connection with her replacement. I hope that is as profitable for me. So currently, I serve as kind of I'm a career counselor and a consultant with the NIH, and I go out to the Research Triangle Park, which is in our area, several times a month to talk to the scientists. I want to share just a little bit, am I over time? No? Okay. About where I live, because I think that has pretty significant implications for how I've developed my niches and my science focus and working with international clients. The Triangle area of North Carolina, so I live in Durham. Chapel Hill, Durham, Raleigh, we kind of refer to as the Triangle area of North Carolina. There are several universities, large, prominent, nationally ranked universities. Chapel Hill, Duke, NC State, all big within maybe a 25-mile radius of one another. And a handful of other smaller private schools. So we have lots of education in the area. Medical centers, two of the top nationally ranked, all different specialty ranks, both at Duke and at UNC in the area, which bring in residents and students and fellows and faculty, clinical faculty, who are from all around the world. There are several government agencies. Raleigh is the state capital, so there's the state government there, and there are several federal agencies in our area, the NIH being one of them. The Environmental Protection Agency has a big office there, a Research Triangle Park. The Forestry Department has some offices. We have a VA in Durham. So there's a lot of federal government organizations there. And then with this research park, we have tremendous technology, pharmacology, just innovation, engineering, SAS, IBM, Cisco, all in that area. Pharmaceutical companies like Glaxo, Bayer, Novartis, just big global organizations. So they've got organizations, they've got offices all over the world. What does that bring? People from all over the world and pretty highly educated. So in my clientele, I was thinking about what I wanted to share today. I realized that, of course, the NIH is probably 90% PhD level clients. In my own individual practice, I think I probably work with about half of my clientele as PhD. Because they're just working in all these different environments and they have a lot of education. That could be kind of intimidating. You realize people use vocabulary that I don't use. They do, and I sometimes I'll go home and go, what was it? What did I say? But they sort of respect that I come from a similar way. I can talk about my graduate experience. I know what it takes to get, manuscripts reviewed and submitted, and I knew what it was like, to go on an academic job search, to teach. So I have a lot of experiences that have helped me in my work with clients. I think it gives me a lot of credibility, they have respect for me, and that's helped in building alliance and building trust in the relationship. I've worked at several academic institutions. UVA currently has about 28% of student diversity, I think was what I saw on their website. And they have almost 10% international student population. And from those numbers, the probably more heavily graduate student, although I don't know that for sure. And at UNC Chapel Hill, it's up to 33% ethnic diversity. And at both of those institutions, I would think, I don't know what the percentages are, but probably many of those diversity numbers come from first-generation students who were born here in America but have parents who both immigrated to the United States. UNC is not quite as high internationally, but about 5%. And I think in comparison with what I saw on the website, you can correct me if I'm wrong, was maybe 1 or 2% international students here at FSU. And I don't know what the diversity percentage is here. But just to sort of give you an example, so we're even working in those counseling centers. There were people from all over the world and coming from very different cultural experiences and backgrounds. And then at NIH, at the NIHS, it's 50% of the trainees are international trainees. Now, many of them study here in the United States, but they're not all from the United States. And some of them just come here to train and just to study and learn. So I've created this slide not so much to say these are challenges that you might face, but I was thinking more about some things that I've learned that have been important for me and valuable in my experiences, particularly in working with the more culturally diverse and international clientele. Well, obviously, language is a big one. I do not speak other languages. I have not traveled to very many places outside of the United States. And I talk with people from Asia, from India, from China, from Africa, from South American countries, from all over Europe, from Russia, from Turkey, smaller, Philippines, Malaysia. I've talked to people from all over the world. I cannot, in terms of the cultural difference, I can't understand. I don't come with a frame of reference about their experiences and what their backgrounds involve. So I learn a lot from my clients. They share a lot about themselves, and if I need to know things, I will ask questions, and they share. In terms of the language piece, what I found is that I have to be careful about some of the things that I say. The bigger concept things may not be as understood as easily. As I have become more comfortable doing what I do, I speak more informally, I use more slang, more American colloquialisms, and you have to say, oh, wait a minute. I did a presentation 2 weeks ago, and this was at NIH, and I said something, I was doing on resilience, so this is what I'm doing on resilience. And I said something about, I wasn't suggesting that people sort of approach life in a Pollyannish way. This woman raised her hand and she said, what is Pollyannish? Now, that may be dated too here even in America, but I appreciate it. I said, thank you, absolutely. Let me tell you what that means. And I realized that the older I'm getting, the more I'm doing that. So I have to, sort of step back and go, wait, that means so-and-so. I had this one client, she was from India, and she would say phrases, and I would think, I don't think that meant quite what she said it meant. Everybody I work with speaks English, so I don't have to try to speak a different language. But she would say these phrases, and I thought, they're not quite sounding like, I don't think that fits in context. And one time I said, I will clarify, did you mean, and she said, oh, no, I didn't mean that. I said, well, what you said. Another time she said, she was struggling, and she said, what I want to say, we have this phrase in India, in my home country, and she thought about it, she goes, well, I'm not sure of it in English, I think, and she said, I go, oh, we have that same phrase. That's an American phrase, too. We say that same thing. I think one of the things that's been a challenge for me has been understanding and recognition of cultural gender differences. As a woman in America, I've had a pretty easy road. And hearing from some other, particularly women, that's not always the case. And many of them who come to study and train in the United States have said to me, I don't want to go back, or there's not a market for like academic positions in their home country for women. It can be really difficult and very few. Or just, the cultural gender issues in my country, I just like it here better. And I saw, I think there were some articles in U.S. News and World Report recently about international students in this country, that the numbers are going up, that students from other countries appreciate and value the opportunity opportunity to study here because they feel like they have a little bit more freedom and to choose what they want to study, and there's freedom of opportunity. So I talked about misunderstandings, communication. This was another important thing for me to understand and kind of check in and ask questions about was just in general perceptions of mental health, medication, and help seeking. I was visiting with a friend, a parent of a child my daughter's friends with, who's from India. Both she and her husband are from India. She was kind of going through a tough time. I said, okay, can we meet? And so I wasn't doing anything professional, but she just wanted to kind of talk to me about what was going on. And they had an arranged marriage, and their son, who's my older daughter's age, just went for college. And she was kind of going through a tough time. And her parents live with them. And I said, can you, is there anybody that you could talk to about waiting? She said, no, I can't. Mental health in the country, I can't talk. She couldn't even talk to her mother about it, who lived under the same roof. So just, kind of understanding that. It can be, I think that helps us and informs us in our work with our clients. Visa issues for education and work. I do not know a thing about visas, and I hear lots and lots and lots about this now. You can't stay in the United States. You have to have a reason for being here. And your education visa, when you graduate, runs out. So you have to time these things so that you can do that appropriately. And work visas. I've worked with many individuals who wanted to stay in the United States but didn't have a job, can't find somebody to support the green card and sponsorship, so they end up going back to their home countries, and not always by choice. And the last thing that I want to share is that it has been my experience in working with my international clients that there's a lot of individual and family sacrifice in their choices to come to the States to do what they're doing. I've encountered experiences where individuals have left children in home countries with other family members, or in the States, spouse, partner in a different state with the young child, and family from abroad is coming to see them, but they're in North Carolina, for example. And partners and spouses who come with the individuals who are in education or some training opportunity, but who don't speak English well and are not, they can't work because they're not the ones with the training visas. So there's just a lot of complexity there, and a lot more that you don't, kind of levels of complexity that you may not encounter with clients who are American born. I think that's all I'm going to share.